Hello and welcome to day two of this exciting conference. Of course, this is the gastroenterology track, and I'm the lead again for today. This is Pratik Sharma from Kansas City. I am a gastroenterologist based here at the University of Kansas and a professor of medicine. And I've been following and interested in this field of artificial intelligence, specifically related to endoscopy and computer vision. So for day two, we will be focusing on AI for GI in clinical practice, and a few use cases will be discussed. This is what the agenda looks like for today. Very soon, I'll be passing this over to Dr. Tassos, who will be the moderator for today's track. And the agenda, as you can see, is we will be talking about the use cases for AI, followed by the roundtable networking break. And after that, from 1:40, we will have real-time applications of AI in GI being chaired by Dr. Raj Mohammadi, and we'll have a panel discussion at that time. And finally, you can see that we will finish up with the closing remarks at 3 p.m., followed by the networking session starting at 3 p.m. So again, welcome to day two. And now it's my pleasure to hand this over to Dr. Tassos. Dr. Tassos, please.
Dr. Sharma, thank you for the introduction. We're heading for the second day, the session of artificial intelligence in GI, gastrointestinal and overall, gastroenterology and gastrointestinal endoscopy overall. Welcome, my name is Tassos Koulaouzidis. I'm mostly known for my work in capsule endoscopy, and for that reason I was asked to chair this session. I guess if we think about the year past and maybe a couple of years before that, a couple of buzzwords come in mind. One, of course, couldn't be any different than COVID. The other two that probably appear almost in a similar kind of time frame is artificial intelligence and singularity. And artificial intelligence here really entered quite aggressively since 2016, 2017 in the field of gastrointestinal endoscopy, with many applications in colonoscopy. There are, to the best of my knowledge, about 5 systems that provide detection capability, artificial intelligence assisted capability in endoscopy. And fairly recently, in 2019, we've seen one in small bowel capsule endoscopy as well. So in that aspect, the theme overall of this session will revolve around the application of artificial intelligence in the gastrointestinal endoscopy field and gastroenterology referrals. Overall, in the last couple of decades, I would say the field of endoscopy and gastroenterology has been saturated by a number of predictive scores for diseases or outcomes. I think everything is now streamlined to provide probably supercomputers with some capacity of producing outcomes for us, and also, where possible, assist in the diagnosis and, why not, treatment in the future. So without further ado, let me introduce the first speaker and also his talk. Our first speaker is Dr. Omer Ahmed, a gastroenterologist, a senior clinical research fellow at UCL with a specialist interest in interventional endoscopy and advanced imaging. He was awarded the A.J. Clark Prize for the best overall performance and placed on a prestigious Dean's List for outstanding academic achievement. His specific research interests include identifying barriers to the implementation of capsule learning in healthcare overall. He's actively involved and he has published extensively in international initiatives related to the effective validation and implementation of artificial intelligence solutions. His PhD focuses on the clinical translation of artificial intelligence in endoscopy, and this has led to the development of an AI software for real-time use during colonoscopy. Therefore, I think we cannot find a better person to start the challenge here by presenting his talk, Challenges and Barriers to Implementing Artificial Intelligence in Clinical Practice, a case study of computer-aided detection and diagnosis in colonoscopy. Dr. Ahmed, the floor is yours.
Thank you to AIMed for inviting me to speak today at this outstanding clinician series event. I will be talking about a real-world use case of computer-aided detection and diagnosis of colorectal polyps during colonoscopy, and my experience of deployment of AI in clinical practice, including addressing some challenges and barriers. I have no financial disclosures, but the technology that I've co-developed during my PhD has been translated by a university spin-out company, Odin Vision Limited. We have witnessed an incredibly rapid translational journey for AI in colonoscopy. I started research in this area in 2017 when we were beginning our journey, performing preclinical research and feasibility studies on small data sets. And now, astonishingly, we have regulatory approval in Europe and real-world deployment of multiple devices. So why has this occurred with such speed and pace? Well, crucially, the use cases for AI in colonoscopy are very robust. There is a wealth of evidence demonstrating that colonoscopy is protective against colorectal cancer by the detection and removal of precancerous polyps. Most commonly encountered ones are adenomas, and the adenoma detection rate is correlated with the degree of protection offered. Unfortunately, adenoma detection rates are highly operator dependent, with large variation in clinical practice, and associated interval colorectal cancer rates are unacceptably high. The second use case for AI is polyp characterization, where polyps can be optically diagnosed using endoscopic imaging techniques, which potentially allows us to forego the need of taking biopsies or removing or assessing polyps histopathologically, leading to estimated savings of approximately $85 million per annum. Now, unfortunately, it's been very difficult to implement optical diagnosis into routine clinical practice due to inter-observer variability amongst endoscopists, particularly outside of expert settings. So where are we now? Whilst regulatory approval has not yet been achieved in the USA for AI in colonoscopy, the process has been much easier in Europe, and I've been very fortunate to use all of these devices in clinical practice, and I'd like to give you some perspectives on clinical deployment of AI in this setting. Firstly, having such a large number of devices on the market that can perform both AI-assisted polyp detection and characterization is a great success, but yet we are still awaiting real-world widespread implementation into routine clinical practice. And there are some potential challenges and barriers that lay ahead. We recently published this international Delphi consensus process to identify some of the major priorities for clinical implementation. A thematically diverse long list was created, with issues ranging from data access and sharing, which are crucial for further technological developments, through to performance evaluation, regulatory approval processes, ethical and legal issues, and healthcare economics. But what I'd like to do is highlight to you what I believe are some of the key areas. Firstly, we should really embrace the concept that algorithms are the new drugs, and careful evaluation is going to be essential for clinical adoption. For computer-aided detection and diagnosis in colonoscopy, we're really somewhere around phase 3, and perhaps we're just starting to come to terms with the phase 4 stage of this scheme, which illustrates 4 key phases for algorithm evaluation. And phase 4 may be particularly challenging currently, and the framework is yet to evolve in terms of monitoring performance post-deployment, including issues such as algorithmic audit, which currently, to my knowledge, does not take place routinely. But one thing we should be incredibly proud of in endoscopy and colonoscopy is that we have the largest number of published prospective randomized control trials out of any use case for AI in medicine. And systematic reviews and meta-analyses, such as the one highlighted here, have demonstrated that computer-aided detection software has led to a significant improvement in adenoma detection rates. However, it's important to note the caveat that the benefits are currently mainly limited to small-sized adenomas, and there is some debate as to whether additional detection of these will actually translate to long-term reductions in colorectal cancer rates. Conversely, for polyp characterization, there are very few reported prospective trials in the literature, and there are no randomized control trials to date. Another very important consideration is cost effectiveness, particularly as this will underpin reimbursement strategies. To date, no reimbursement from public health insurance bodies has been granted for AI and colonoscopy software. This study illustrated here is a published post hoc analysis from a trial using AI-based polyp characterization software, where the findings suggested that there were significant cost savings when the software was utilized as part of a strategy to leave in diminutive, i.e. less than 5 millimeter in size polyps, as compared to resecting them all. Similar studies have not yet been published for AI-based polyp detection software, which is a more complex situation, given that in the short term, we're likely to see costs probably increase due to the additional detection of polyps and their subsequent resections. But in the long term, this could translate to cost savings due to reductions in the interval colorectal cancer rates. To prove this, or at least gather evidence to support this, it's likely we will require microsimulation modeling studies to provide more insights. So broadly speaking, clinicians and organizations can find it quite challenging to make procurement decisions for AI. This is not surprising, as we're in a new era. And this document, published by NHSX, which is a large national body in the United Kingdom, helps to define 10 key questions for procurement of AI, and I'd encourage you to read this document. In terms of AI in colonoscopy, really some of the key considerations now are about post-deployment phase monitoring, so performance monitoring and maintenance, and this, as I mentioned earlier, is a framework that is evolving. One of the challenges is obtaining real-world data as these systems are deployed, not only to assess performance, but also retrain and improve models. This may well become easier and change as we get greater adoption of cloud computing and increasing storage and availability of routinely captured endoscopic video data. This is my final slide. I'd just like to emphasize that for AI clinical implementation and adoption, the road is tortuous and complicated. And although regulatory approval and demonstration of clinical effectiveness are major milestones that we should celebrate, the chances of success in terms of adoption are much higher if there is multi-stakeholder involvement very much from the outset of AI development. Thank you once again for AIMed for inviting me to speak at this event, and I look forward to the discussion session on this topic.
Omer, thank you so much for this great talk. So that's the end of this session. I hope that we deliver whatever we promised to do, meaning to show you an overview of the use of artificial intelligence, as well as the barriers for that in gastrointestinal endoscopy and gastroenterology overall. I would like to remind you that there is a networking breaking session, and we welcome you all to join. We can find speakers and maybe exchange opinions and do the necessary networking, which is actually one of the main reasons for this event. Thank you again for your time.